Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be installing a special part. This is going to be an oil cooler for my 2.5 swap NC Miata. This is from a company called ColorFittings in collaboration with Turn9 Automotive up in Northern California. They were gracious enough to send me this kit to do a review and an install. And right now, let's get to the unboxing. All right, so starting off, we're greeted with this nice box. Everything was packaged well. I've been through it a little bit, but I promise you it has not been on the car, so this will be obviously all brand new. Let's open it up and see what we have. So starting off, we have this very nice instruction sheet with all the steps on how to install this kit. Doesn't look like it's very many steps, but it's all laminated. That's pretty cool. I haven't seen that really from a lot of companies. Contents of the package. We have a thermostatic oil sandwich plate, O-ring boss fittings. We have driver side cooler brackets, passenger cooler brackets, Setrab oil cooler, hose fitting and line assemblies, and a low profile oil filter. So ColorFittings will give you an option on doing the fittings. Obviously that's what they're known for. I went with this orange. Kind of reminds me of like, you know, the Super Miata 949 Racing Orange. So I'm gonna put that on. They have a bunch of other colors as well. So refer to the website and you can pick out any color you want. Oil filter adapter, some of the AN fittings with the O-rings, miscellaneous hardware, the brackets. Here's the oil filter housing. This is an OEM piece from Ford, Mocal Thermostatic Oil Filter housing thing. Brackets for the oil cooler. Give you a low profile wicks filter. And here's the Setrab unit. Very nice gasket for the filter housing. So now that I've done a unboxing of the ColorFittings Turn9 Automotive oil cooler kit, let's get the car on the jack stands and let's install this. The car's up on the jack stands. Let's take the front bumper off. The next step after that would be taking the under tray off. I have no under tray, so we'll skip that step. You will have to do that if you're going to be installing this kit. So let's take the front bumper off. So I'm currently letting the oil drain. If you have forgotten, it's a 17 millimeter for the oil drain plug. Then I would take off the oil filter. And then next in the instructions is, you can barely see it, but there's one of the nuts for the oil filter housing. Now, I just wanted to go over this part of the instructions. The oil filter housing, if you want to not listen to me and just read that, you can pause the video. But essentially, the 2.0 oil filter housings had a little section right here where my middle finger's at that gets in the way of this oil cooler kit. The oil filter housing that ColorFittings Turn9 Automotive includes is a 2.5 liter oil filter housing. Obviously, I have a 2.5 liter, so I already have that oil filter housing. But if I'm already going to be in there, I might as well put in the new housing with the new gasket. So I will do that. But if you have a 2.5 already and you don't want to go through that step, you can just basically skip step 4 and 3 and 4, I believe you can skip those steps. So with the oil filter off and the front left wheel off, you get a pretty good shot of the oil filter housing. Already unplugged the oil pressure sensor. Looks like you have 4 10s and it'll come right off. So I'm going to take that off right now. So there is the oil filter housing off of the block. Obviously it makes a huge mess, so make sure you have a drip pan and etc. But the 2 10s on the left hand side easily can get through the wheel well. The other 2 on the side cannot get through the wheel well. Go underneath the bottom of the car and you will easily be able to get them. So as expected, these look identical because they are identical. So this is the 2.5 oil filter housing that was on the motor that was in the car. Here is the brand new Ford unit. Obviously that's a Ford unit, but used. They're identical. I'll switch the oil pressure sensor onto the new housing, put the gasket on, and then I will put this back in the car. Okay, so I have removed the oil pressure gauge from the old housing onto the new one. I have mocked up the new thermostatic oil sandwich plate. I oiled the O-rings from the pack of AN fittings, and the O-ring only goes on one side. It goes on the side going to the sandwich plate. Put a little bit of oil. I will torque these to spec. I will then put a little bit of oil on this seal, which will act as like the oil filter seal, and that'll be flipped onto this side here. And once I have all this stuff torqued here, I will move on to the car and put the oil filter housing back on the engine. So these two fittings get 29.5 foot-pounds. So I just have it lightly in the vise. That's it for those two. Sandwich plate to oil filter housing. This middle section gets 20 foot-pounds. Make sure that seal is oiled, a little bit of oil on it. Now this would be the completed unit. It'd essentially be going into the motor like this. The motor is right here. Going this way, your line's going out. Your new slim oil filter would go here, oil pressure gauge here. Put the gasket on, and then I'll put it back in the car. Running out of daylight, but I was able to get the whole cooler assembly installed. That's the new oil filter housing, the new Mocal Thermostatic Oil Sandwich plate, fittings, everything's all torqued to spec. And I will continue next with putting the AN lines, routing those over to here, and the oil cooler gets mounted up somewhere in this general area. So as of now, I have the oil sandwich plate installed with the filter. However, I'm gonna insert a clip. I had a problem with the original filter that they sent me. Luckily, Wix had this exact same filter but shorter as I was hitting the subframe. But the new short filter is on. Everything up on the engine block is tightened, ready to go. I have the oil cooler lines laid out, my AN wrench. I have the Setrab unit ready to go, pre-filled with 1/2 quart of oil. The AN lines are torqued on. The O-rings are have oil on them, and I started one of the bracketry for it. And I'll put the other bracket on, and then I'll get underneath the car and put on the cooler. All right, so moving along, and you may be asking why the intake is off, because the bracketry for the cooler goes where the intake system. This is a Mazda Speed / AEM kit. One of the grommets go here and the other one goes here, but then this whole intake tube basically lays, the filter is basically right where my hand's at. So the brackets for the cooler literally hit the intake. So I'm gonna go forth with the install just so someone who's watching this video that has a stock intake system can figure out or see the rest of the install. Me on my car and anyone else who has a Mazda Speed / AEM intake, I'm gonna have to figure out the brackets. I'm considering just putting these on the back side, and I might have enough room, so just move these towards inside the back. I'm gonna have to cut the bracket a little bit, but we'll see. We'll move in the back, and I'll see if it ends up fitting, but for now, I'm gonna put the cooler in just so you guys can see it who have the stock intake system. So I obviously don't have it fully bolted in or torqued, but you can see how the cooler is mounted. I know this would be a pretty sturdy location once everything's tightened. Your bumper is going to cover most of it, and it's at a good location for airflow. And it's not obviously blocking your radiator, so. But this is obviously, if this is going to be for someone installing it with the stock intake system, because with the AEM, I'll attempt to put the tube in just so you can see, but there's no way it'll fit. Really, this, when you put this intake in, you have to come from the bottom and wrap it around, and I mean there's no way. So I'm gonna see if I can mount this back a little bit behind this support, and if it works, I will definitely video it. If I don't, I think I'll still kind of mock up the lines and go to the cooler on the engine, just so anyone who has a stock intake can still use this install for something. So here's a rough mock-up of the lines. Obviously these, I wouldn't run it like how it is on a track, but this is just for mock-up purposes / visual, so you can see. I would route them a little bit better, zip tie them out of the way of everything, but they do need to go over the rack and over the steering, the anti-roll bar. Good representation. They end up on the block, so I would zip tie these, get them out of the way of the steering column a little bit better. But it's basically a straight shot all the way to the cooler. Like I said previously, I can't use the Mazda Speed / AEM intake. I am assuming this was meant for a stock, intake car. But other than that little hiccup, everything else about the kit was really top-notch, top quality. I really like it. I'll figure it out. This isn't going to be the end of the world to kind of move the cooler, but I did like how there was really no other modification to get it to the point where it's at right now. No cutting, no anything like that. So if I had fender liners and stuff, it'd be a little bit more tricky to run the lines, as in I wouldn't be able to just throw them like how I did because nothing was in my way. But that wouldn't be very difficult for someone to do if they had fender liner in there. So I'm gonna try to get back to moving those brackets and making it work for my intake. So I'm currently letting the car idle. I filled up the oil to a normal level, turned it on, I'm letting it idle, just checking for any sort of leaks or anything like that. So that's a good sign. But instructions say to let it idle, and when these lines, the fittings coming out of the oil cooler block are warm, shut it down and then check the oil level and fill as needed. So I overfilled just a hair just because I knew the lines, everything were dry. The cooler obviously had half a quart in there, so let it idle for a little bit more and we'll go from there. All right, so I let it run for a little bit. This line coming out of here is still a little warm. This one is significantly cooler to the touch. So I'm assuming this is the oil out going through the cooler, and then this is the intake coming back in. And I know obviously it wasn't, running the car hard, but it was a pretty significant difference between the right side and the left side. Obviously coming into the cooler, I was about a quart low, filled that up. I'm full now. And that's really about it for this oil cooler. It's not a significant install as in, time wise, and no cutting or drilling or anything like that. Those original spots for the hardware, bracketry was already there. Again, obviously I ran into the hiccup of having my intake system. If you have the Mazda Speed / AEM intake, you will literally run into the same problem. I talked to a couple people. The zero limit intake should completely be out of the way. That's going to run out of that hole in the core support and then off to the passenger headlight, and the filter and intake sit over there. So you should have no problem right there because it sits up high. I'm debating if I want to buy that intake, or I literally just need to I actually have a tiny filter. I'll show you right here. This was the old AEM setup. This is a filter I've had on my NA Miata when I made a custom intake. So I'm thinking about just literally putting it like right here and then running a straight, you know, tube. But the filter will basically sit like somewhere like right there, or I can do a 90 and come out over here. So I mean, I could buy the zero limit one, or I can kind of make my own, but it's not the end of the world. That'll be super easy, and I'll have plenty of room over here because the bumper basically covers all this stuff. So the zero limit one gets good airflow, so I don't see why if I made a custom one it shouldn't. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked that I have the oil cooler on the car. It's a relatively easy install. I cannot fault the company at all for having the intake that I had and the drop mounts. They installed this kit on a relatively stock car, which I can't fault them for that. So use this video to your own discretion. Putting this in, if you have a stock intake and a stock, you know, mounting system, everything should go in perfectly, no problem. I can't wait to get this thing back on the track and use that cooler to its advantage. And yeah, if you like the video, leave a like, leave a comment. I'll see you guys in the next one.